you want to become famous, definitely don't play the banjo. Play the guitar. There's more likelihood for that to happen. If you want to play the banjo, the good thing about it is that you don't need to dream about becoming famous in an excellent banjo player because nobody will really care.
Welcome to Electric Enthusiasm, the podcast where we celebrate unironic enthusiasm. I relate way too hard to the hungry caterpillar, Katie Cobalt.
I'm Alexander Kjove, and I was traumatized by the movie Deliverance when I was 12 years old.
So, Alex, how does this work?
It is super simple. In each episode, one of us has prepared a topic that they're enthusiastic about, and will do their very best to spread that enthusiasm to the other host and to you, the listener. Or we might have a guest on who's very excited about something that we know nearly nothing about.
And we also have a moment of meta where we get enthusiastic about enthusiasm itself and talk a little bit about why enthusiasm matters and how to live a more enthusiastic life.
And we want to hear about your enthusiasms. Visit our website, electricenthusiasm.com, or our Instagram @electricenthusiasm, and tell us what you're enthusiastic about these days. Or you could even plain old send us an email at hello@electricenthusiasm.com. That was a lot of enthusiasms.
Right?
Our guest in this podcast is Daniel Rodrigues. He is a Portuguese jazz musician living in Copenhagen, where he plays in several different jazz bands, including the Dusty Rag Jazz Band and the Lindy Syncopators. On any given day, you may find Daniel playing at various venues around town or on the streets and in the parks of the city. And Daniel, what are you enthusiastic about?
Well, I'm enthusiastic about the good old banjo. Yay! Here we go.
Woo! Super cool.
That was awesome. On this podcast, we like to start with the facts first. So, what the heck is a banjo anyway, and how's it different from like a guitar or a ukulele or a mandolin?
Okay, so a banjo is basically a wonderful instrument, right? Let's just put it out there. And I think it differs from other instruments because I think this banjo can express different types of feelings. You know, it can sound funny and it can sound raw and it can sound even vulgar, it can sound sexy, but it's not so versatile, I think, in regards to music genres. Like once you start playing the banjo, people tend to associate to either bluegrass or maybe hot jazz or something. So I think that it's versatile in terms of feelings, but not so much in terms of genres. But I like it nonetheless. I think it's just banjo fits well everywhere. But I might be biased, okay? I might be biased on these, but you know how it goes.
I think this podcast is all about celebrating people's biases. Like, we're here for it. We're cool with this.
Okay, that's good to know.
Where does the banjo come from? Like, where are the origins of it from?
So according to some musicologists, they state that it comes from the conting instrument, which is an instrument with 3 strings, and it has a very long neck, and it has a body made out of this calabash, which is like this vegetable that you can use as a bottle. You can put water in, and so they just cut it in half. They stick a stick in it, and then they just put some goat leather over it, and it does look a bit like the banjo. And that instrument is from Gambia, right? So West Africa. And it's kind of funny that I believe the capital is named Banjul. So I don't know if I'm sure there's no connection there, but it's just interesting, I suppose. Anyway, it was taken to the United States by African people, and it just developed from there, right? And I think it really became popular in the 1800s because of the minstrel shows. So I think that's how it develops. And then from there, it just goes into folk music with different techniques and whatnot.
Super cool.
Awesome.
I don't know how much you want to know of it
No, no,
because
I
it's
want
a
to know
very
everything.
extensive history, and I wouldn't pretend to know it all, of course.
Yeah. But it's really interesting for me because as a person who does jazz dancing, like it has a really similar origin to jazz. Like our dance also
Mhm.
comes from West African roots. It came over with the slave trade and then it grew in America through the minstrel shows, through all of the blackface traditions. It's almost the same story. So it's really cool to see that the instruments and the dance kind of grew from the same roots and grew at the same time. So for me, this is like, ooh, interesting, tasty. I
Yeah,
see reflections, I see similarities.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Of all of the instruments that you could possibly play, why are you so enthusiastic about the banjo?
Yeah, I think that when I play the banjo, like there are some bands where I play the banjo and play the guitar, right? Depending of like if I'm playing like more 1910s or 20s sort of jazz, I would play the banjo, and if I'm playing more swing like in the 30s or something, I would use the guitar. And I just feel like when I play the banjo, somehow I feel like I have a more powerful instrument at hand. So it's a louder instrument, right? So, and he also has a more peculiar sound that makes people maybe turn their heads a little more than if it had been a guitar, where the guitar can be a very charming instrument, but it's also more, it's more banal in some way. So everybody plays the guitar.
Is it fair to say that the guitar is a little fancier and the banjo is maybe a little more fun?
Yeah, I think so. I think like the banjo, especially in Denmark, when you play the banjo, I think people, especially the older people in Denmark, they associate straight away with the glæl jazz, right? So the happy jazz, which means the Dixieland revival of the 50s sort of jazz. So, yeah.
Now I'm just curious because you said that. So my understanding of a guitar in a jazz band is that it's part of the rhythm section. It's kind of holding that lovely swing rhythm that we love. Does the banjo play the same role in earlier jazz music, or does it have a different role in the ensemble?
Yeah, that's a good question. So basically, the banjo, of course, as it develops as a like the minstrel sort of instrument, and it was very much solo instrument. So you could play a one-man band sort of thing where you could sing and play the banjo and can play melodies and whatnot. But then with the 1910s and with the emergence of jazz, there's all the horns and whatnot. So the banjo needs to be louder, and that means playing with a plectrum, right? So instead of you plucking the strings, you'd play with the plectrum. So then, it does become the rhythm section instrument in jazz, right? So you just use it to keep that beat or that swing, right? And it does very much function like the guitar. Just happens that the banjo works at a different register. The banjo in the 10s and 20s could be heard over the horns, but the guitar then in the 30s, is playing at a more charming register, which is the tenor area. So it fills in like the bass, upright bass, and then there's the horns, and kind of the guitar fits that space nicer. Whereas the banjo is too close to where the horns are playing, so it gets a little more tricky. So it's a different style, right?
Yeah.
But the guitar is more charming, but they play the same quarter note sort of swing feel. Yeah.
Super cool. Interesting.
When you tell people that you play the banjo, what kind of reactions do you get?
Yeah, so I think people usually think straight away that I play like a rednecks music, like they think of the dueling banjos. They go that
Deliverance.
straight away. Or they tell a joke like, oh, did you know that, there was a banjo in my car the other day and someone broke in and put another banjo in. So the next day there was two banjos.
Oh my
There's like
god.
this type of jokes people do, but they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking
No.
about now.
The banjo does have a bit of a reputation that is unfair because you can play very complex and very advanced music on a banjo.
Yes, especially in fusion jazz and whatnot. There's a Bella Fleck. He's a master of the banjo, and there's really complicated stuff he's doing with the banjo. It's really outstanding.
Wow. Is there any difference in how you feel when you're playing the banjo compared to, say, a guitar or another instrument? How does it
Yeah,
feel to you?
it depends of the context. For example, if I'm playing guitar in a gypsy jazz quartet, so Django Reinhardt inspired quartet, it's a different feeling because you get to solo more, and it's more than just being in the rhythm section playing. But if I am to play rhythm guitar in, say, a bigger jazz band, then I think the banjo is somehow more fun because you can be more playful with the banjo. So you can always add some notes here and there. Whereas with the guitar, you won't be heard as much. So you tend to just try to really play together with the kick drum of the drum set and with the bass to really try to become these three perfect mix. Whereas with the banjo, it's a little more free when it plays.
Beautiful. And that brings me to a question that's again is not on our list here, but how does it I'll try that again.
Take two.
So, for instance, last Friday, you played at
Mm,
a swing dance party in Copenhagen. I was there. You played with the Dusty Rag Jazz Band. It was beautiful. When
nice,
you're
thank you.
on stage with your banjo, with your band, um, how does it feel like to play in that moment where you're connecting with the other musicians, you're connecting with the music, you're connecting maybe with the dancers on the dance floor? Can you
Mhm.
explain, what's going on in your mind? Are you thinking about, oh yeah, I should buy milk on the way home, or what's going on in your head? How does that
I,
feel? I've always
yeah.
wondered about this.
So when I play the banjo, for example, with Dusty Rag, because the we play songs where the form is very simple. It's easy to know what's coming next and stuff, so you can actually spend more attention in what's happening around you. So if someone is having a solo next to you, you can play your rhythm and then add a little something in between when they have a little pause. Then you can fill in something there. And the banjo allows for that to happen more easily than with the guitar, where you're playing the rhythm and then you would have to go to a different part of the neck to actually add like a musical phrase. So, in this sense, what I'm thinking is like if I'm playing one of those songs that I know the changes very well, I'm looking at the dancers, and if I look at someone, I try to do a little funny thing, maybe they'll notice it. And also, of course, with my band members, if they're soloing, I try to talk to them a little bit. Whereas with the guitar, I wouldn't do it as much.
Do you prefer playing for dancers, or you don't mind? Does it make a difference to you if your audience is dancing or just like watching and drinking?
Yeah, it depends, right? When I play jazz, I really prefer playing for dancers, of course. But if I play some other music genres, then I think the sitting down audience would be a more suitable one. So that you have that feeling that you are playing and you're putting a lot of effort and people are really listening to it. Whereas with the dancing, it's jazz is more about the feel of it. So I really much rather play for dancers, of course.
I love dancing with live musicians. One of my favorite things to do is to pick someone in the band and have like a dance duet with them where I'm trying to respond to everything they're doing. And it can only happen with a live band. And it's
Yeah.
really fun when I've done that. And like the musicians have noticed and they're like, aha, there's a crazy lady here. Let's pander to her. And they start playing
Yeah.
really ridiculous stuff that's really hard to dance to, but it's like really it's a fun challenge. So it makes me happy that as a musician that you don't find us weird. That calms
Yeah,
my
exactly.
anxiety a lot.
Actually, a funny thing is that, for example, when you play, say, big band jazz, where you have a lot of arranged things and you need to follow your specific part, then it's harder to actually create that connection, I think. So, but I think the other one that is more based in improvisation is actually more suitable to create that communication. For example, Chick Webb, he would improvise some drum lines and stuff. But for example, the horns, they wouldn't be able because they would be playing a background while there's someone soloing, so they need to follow that. So it's not as easy to create that connection. But, those guys back in the days, they would do it all because they would play it every night. Whereas, say, playing in a big band today, I think it's harder to get people to memorize those parts and really be free with it. People tend to stare quite a lot into the sheets. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about how it feels to you to play the banjo. What does having a banjo in it do to a jazz band? How does that change sort of the feeling of the band or the music? What does it do to a jazz band?
It really puts the jazz band in a different place, in a different genre straight away, I think. You really think more of the 1910s, 20s sort of jazz, and you can also think of ragtime. Whereas if you have the guitar, then it's a little more ambiguous. It can be, 30s or 40s, 50s. So in that sense, I think it really changes the genre drastically.
The second I hear a banjo within a jazz band, it makes me think like Dixieland. It makes me think like that region, like Louisiana. All of a sudden, like for me, it has such a sense of place as opposed to like a guitar. Okay, I'm curious. What is the most unlikely song you've ever played? Like You can play jazz. We understand this. But you mentioned that banjos are versatile. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, what is the most unlikely song you've ever played on the banjo?
We do these burlesque shows sometimes, right? And sometimes some burlesque artists, they have some crazy requests. Not crazy requests, but some songs that normally you wouldn't play with a banjo, right? And some of these songs were Blue Monday from New Order, I think. Blue
Yeah,
Monday.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's which is a new wave sort of song, right?
yeah.
And then another song was Don't Speak.
No doubt.
No doubt. Yeah, exactly. So I think these two songs were really the most far off the ancient
Katie
repertoire.
doesn't know that song. You should sing
I
a little bit
I
of
no,
it for
no.
her.
I'm like I'm trying to imagine. I'm pretty sure I know the song. I'm trying to imagine it with a banjo, and my brain
Oh
is
yeah,
not physically capable of putting those sounds together.
yeah. I don't know how we did it, but we did it nonetheless.
How hard is it to learn to play the banjo?
It depends of the level of skill you want to get to, right? If you want to become famous, definitely don't play the banjo. Play the guitar. There's more likelihood for that to happen. If you want to play the banjo, the good thing about it is that you don't need to dream about becoming famous in a excellent banjo player because nobody will really care. But people will have fun listening to you playing the banjo regardless. You just won't be very famous.
So, Alex, now that you've learned about the banjo, what are you excited about? What have we learned today that's been like, interesting?
Two things. I like how Daniel describes it as louder and more fun than the guitar. I can resonate with anything that's loud and fun. And also, I think the main message that I took away from this is guitars suck, banjos rule. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm thinking now, like, I think we need to have like a guitar expert, or like someone who's really passionate about guitars on the podcast, so that we can have like a banjo versus a guitar debate, if you will.
Balance, exactly. Bring balance to
Yeah.
the force. What about you, Katie? What did you resonate with in the banjo?
So I love jazz music and I love learning more about it. So it's really exciting to talk to a musician and like understand more about how you place the music. But also like the fact that the banjo has such a sense of character and that it can change the sound of a whole jazz band just by adding this one instrument. And also right at the beginning, you're talking about like different emotions that a banjo can have. And as a throwaway comment, you just said banjos can be sexy. And I haven't forgotten about that. And I'm going to like now seek out a banjo that is very sexy because I want to hear that. So, if people want to learn more about the banjo, where should they start?
Start by, first of all, deciding which type of music they want to listen to that has a banjo in it. So, usually it would be folk music or like bluegrass or jazz. I think that would be the main genres. And then, if you want to play bluegrass, I would say Earl Scruggs or Bella Fleck, the gentleman I mentioned previously in regards to fusion music. And if it comes to jazz, and if you want to have a funny banjo playing with the chord melody, would be Eddie Peabody. I'd say he's the really showman. It's funny to look at him play. So it's not just the fact that he plays the instrument very well, but the way he plays it, he makes a whole act out of playing that instrument, and I think that's really really fun. And it's basically what the banjo is
Ooh,
about.
I'm going to look that up. That sounds cool.
We'll find some of those and include them in the notes for the podcast.
Awesome.
Smart.
Daniel, this has been phenomenal. Thank you for sharing your enthusiasm for the banjo.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Really.
Could you play us out of this? Give us another little taste of the banjo, possibly? Could we convince you?
Play no doubt. Play no doubt.
Yes, of course. Okay. I'll play something from the 1910s, I believe.
Yeah.
Some of these days.
I like the flourish at the end. That was so cool.
That instrument makes me happy. Thank you so much, Daniel.
It's my pleasure.
What do you think of the banjo, dear listener? Do you also find it to be loud, funny, or even sexy? Or does it make you think of canoeing through a swamp while being chased by inbred hillbillies? Has anybody ever broken into your car and left an additional banjo? Visit our website, electricenthusiasm.com, or our Instagram @electricenthusiasm, and tell us all about it.
So our guest this episode is someone who is very excited, very passionate about the banjo. And you said there was a connection between Mr. Harpo Marx and the banjo. And I'm intrigued. I'm desperately intrigued to hear how these two things connect.
This is amazing. In a previous episode, we talked about Harpo Marx of the Marx Brothers and his lifelong friendship with the pompous New York Times drama critic Alexander Woollcott. So, in 1939, Moss Hart and George Kaufman wrote a stage play called The Man Who Came to Dinner. And the main character in this play is absolutely based on Alexander Woollcott. Okay? He is pompous, he's intellectual, he's rude, keeps insulting other people, wants everything his own way. It's absolutely him. They even acknowledged as much. Alexander Woollcott actually went on to play that role in the California version of the play. They also made a movie of it in 1942. One of the other characters in this play and movie is obviously based on Harpo. He chases women. He's this prankster, obviously based on Harpo. And his name in the play and the movie is Banjo.
Hey! That is a fantastic connection. I love it. Okay, are you ready for our moment of meta?
I am so ready for some meta.
We have a couple of, I don't know, rules, guidelines for things to help people with their enthusiasm, to make sure it's sincere, to make sure it's unironic, to make sure it's genuine. And I phrase this particular guideline as, don't yuck someone's yum. Have you heard this phrase before? Do you know this phrase?
I've heard it from you before, but nowhere else, and I love it. A more like academic framing might be, do not try to diminish other people's enthusiasms, even if you don't agree.
Don't yuck someone's yum.
Catchy. I like it.
And I like it as well because it just has this idea of like, if someone's excited about something, don't go against it. Like, go with them on that journey because it's going to be way more fun if you do. And also like the fact that it has like a bit of like a food or a taste kind of feeling to it, I think it shows someone how to like, you know, we hear a lot about adventurous eaters, like people who are excited to try new cuisines and excited to try different types of food from different regions. You can have that same passion that you have for trying different foods with also different aspects of your life and aspects of the world. And just as I'm an adventurous eater, I'm also an adventurous person, and I want to experience different worlds and understand different people's passions and enthusiasms. And so I hope that you, my dear listener, take this forward and don't yuck someone's yum. Just don't do it.
I think that's a fantastic rule. I am wondering if we can make one exception. Game of Thrones season 8.
But surely no one is yum on that. Surely.
You know, hypothetically, if I ever meet somebody who goes, you know what, Game of Thrones season 8, epic television, so good, I will possibly spend some time trying to persuade them otherwise. I will die mad. I will die bitter about the way that show ended.
I would probably encourage them or help them watch like Lord of the Rings or something. Like, oh, if you think that's great, if that's your standard for great, oh, baby, let's go on an adventure. Let's watch some stuff that ended well, or some stuff where you had these massive epic battles between good and evil, where you could see what was happening because there was light. I feel like if someone thinks that that is the pinnacle of cinema, they have a very low bar to clear on what is fantastic in this world.
Absolutely. You're a better person than me, Katie. I would probably get really bitter and try to make them bitter about it too.
No.
Which wastes everybody's time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't yuck someone else's yum.
Nope.
Rules to live by. We really hope you enjoyed sharing some of our enthusiasms in this episode. Please visit our website at electricenthusiasm.com or find us on Instagram at electricenthusiasm to discover more episodes or leave a comment.
And now go out and just be as loud and twangy as any banjo could be.